Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. I am so excited to be here today. We are covering stop calling it loyalty when it's self abandonment. And, this is something that I've had to work through myself. I was a high achieving woman who equated loyalty to over functioning, self sacrifice, and emotional martyrdom. And I wanted to have this conversation because it has come up recently again in my own life, but it's also come up this week with my clients. And I think it's a really important conversation to have. We as women are conditioned to self abandon. And I think it is very important for us to understand how to move beyond that conditioning because it shows up readily in all of our lives. And I'm not just talking about loyalty in romantic relationships, this is in business, this is in the workplace, this is in friendships, this is in family. I'm going to start with a moment that changed everything for me. It wasn't a dramatic blow up, no screaming match, no big betrayal that made it obvious that I should leave. It was a Tuesday. I was exhausted in the burn deep way sleep doesn't fix. My body felt heavy, my chest felt tight, my phone rang, and I already knew what the call was about. It was somebody needing something yet again. Hi, Elsa from Cali. Advice, support, emotional labor, fixing, holding, explaining, reassuring. And before I even thought about it, before I checked in with myself, before I asked what I needed, I said yes. Not because I wanted to, not because I had the capacity. And remember, if you've been following me around, I now use the term, I do not have the capacity for that. That is like my favorite term. But back on this Tuesday, I didn't have the capacity. But because I didn't know how not to, I remember hanging up the phone and just sitting there. No tears, no anger, just emptiness. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't staying because it felt good. I wasn't staying because it was aligned. I wasn't staying because it was mutual. I was staying because I had confused loyalty with self erasure. Because somewhere along the way, I learned that being loyal meant being available, being dependable, being the one that didn't leave, didn't complain, didn't need too much. I had learned that love was something you proved by enduring, by keeping quiet, by carrying more than you share. And the wild part is everybody praised me for it. You're so loyal. You're such a good woman. You're the only one who understands. I don't know what I would do without you. But no one knew how much it was costing me. No one asked what I had given up to be that loyal. And if I'm being honest, neither did I. Because loyalty had become my identity. I stayed in situations that drained me because leaving felt like betrayal. I swallowed my needs because speaking them felt selfish. I tolerated things that hurt because I told myself this is what love required. And here's the truth that I didn't want to face, and many people don't want to face. I wasn't being loyal, I was being afraid. Afraid of disappointing people, afraid of being seen as difficult, afraid of if I stopped giving, I'll stop being chosen. So I stayed. And every time I stayed, when my body was screaming no, every time I minimized my feelings to protect someone else's comfort, every time I called self betrayal commitment, I left myself behind. That's the part no one talks about. How loyalty, when it's rooted in fear instead of choice, slowly trains you to disappear. You don't wake up one day completely empty. It happens in small ways, in the conversations that you don't have, in the boundaries that you don't set, in the resentment that you swallow and you call maturity. One day, you will realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. And that is when I finally told the truth. First to myself and then to others. I wasn't being loyal. I was abandoning myself in the name of love, duty, and fear. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee that because real loyalty doesn't require you to self abandon. Real loyalty does not demand silence. Real connection doesn't punish you for having needs. What I thought was loyalty was actually survival. And if that landed somewhere in your body, that's why we're here today. If you felt that tightness, that recognition, that quiet, oh shit moment, then this conversation is for you. We're talking about the lie we've been taught to call loyalty and the freedom that comes when we stop abandoning ourselves to keep the peace. So if this is your first time joining me, my name is Letitia. I am the survival mid disruptor. I am a trauma recovery mentor that facilitates disruptive, unapologetic transformations for high achieving women who are ready to access survival mode and take radical ownership of their lives and their growth. I love having conversations around the residual impact of trauma. And I love having conversations about working through trauma and getting out of survival mode. If you've been rocking with me for a while, then you already know that we don't do surface level healing over here. We go deep, we go raw, and we get real uncomfortable in the name of truth, transformation, and disrupting every damn pattern that has kept us stuck. So, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start by talking about the loyalty lie. So many of us were taught to call it loyalty. And it was actually fair with good manners. And I want you to take a second to let that land. Because if you're like me, you grew up hearing a lot that loyalty was everything. Stick by your people, be a ride or die, be the bigger person, don't give up on people. I mean, especially if you were a black woman, you were raised in it. Expected to be the glue, the backbone, the strong one. You were taught to sacrifice, stretch, stay, no matter how much it hurts. Because good women don't leave, good daughters don't question, good friends don't walk away, and good partners, well, they endure. But here's the raw truth, sis. We weren't taught loyalty, we were taught tolerance. Taught to tolerate mistreatment, taught to tolerate being dismissed, taught to tolerate crumbs and call it love. And underneath all of that is fear. Fear of being seen as selfish, fear of being abandoned, fear of if we stop over giving, we would stop being chosen. So we overstay, we overgive, we over explain, we over function, and then we call it commitment. But we're going to break that wide open today. So, first of all, where did that come from? That over loyalty that you carry didn't start in adulthood. It didn't begin with that toxic ex or draining best friend or that job that killed your spirit. It started the moment you realized that being good kept you safe. Maybe you had to parent your parents. Maybe you learned early that your emotions made things worse, so you stayed quiet. Maybe the one time you got love was when you were useful, needed, and agreeable. That's not loyalty. That is a survival strategy. And baby, survival mode will have you calling a burning building a home because at least it's familiar. Your nervous system made the connection. If I stay, I'm safe. If I'm good, I'll be loved. If I don't rock the boat, I won't be left. So We build relationships from that foundation, not from connection, not from safety, but from the fear of what will happen if we stop proving our worth. But let me ask you something that may sting. How many times have you betrayed yourself in the name of being loyal to someone else? How many times have you bit your tongue to keep the peace? Listen, me, 1,000 times. I'm surprised there's not a hole in my tongue because I, particularly in my romantic relationships, kept it quiet, kept the peace, did everything that I needed to do. How many times have you said yes when everything in your body was screaming no? How many times have you stayed quiet so they wouldn't leave? How many times have you sacrificed your needs because they needed you more? And how many of those people would do the same for you? Let's be honest. I'm hearing silence. Because somewhere along the line, you became loyal to them, so loyal to them that you forgot how to be loyal to yourself. And I get it. We fear being the bad guy. We don't want to seem heartless, mean, or cold. We want to be seen as good. But again, sis, being seen as good while feeling like nothing, that's a whole scam. And the cost of that scam is you, your peace, your sanity, your self worth, your wholeness. You cannot be loyal to everyone else while you are abandoning yourself. That's not commitment. That's codependency with a halo. And the worst part is they'll applaud you for it. They'll praise you and your loyalty while you're bleeding. They'll say, she always shows up. She's always there for me. She never complains. But do they ask if you're okay? Do they reciprocate? Whenever think about reciprocity, I think about that the song by Lauren Hill, right? Like we need some reciprocity, right? But oftentimes we don't get reciprocity. So people learned to expect our silence. I want to go a little deeper than this. Sometimes loyalty becomes your identity. You don't know who you are outside of being needed. You built your self worth around being the strong one. You stay because staying is what you do, even when it costs you your mental health, your body, and your spirit. And the scariest question of all is if you stop being loyal to them, what is actually left of you? That's where we pause. That's where we start to unhook because you don't owe anyone your burnout. You don't have to be loyal to roles that require your silence. You don't have to keep proving your worth through endurance. Loyalty is beautiful when it's mutual, when it's respectful, and when it's safe. But loyalty at the cost of your peace, that's self betrayal in a pretty outfit. So today, I want you to get radically honest with yourself, not from judgment, not from shame, but from truth. Because truth is the beginning of freedom. So if you have been joining me for a while, you know that I often give you journal prompts to ruminate on because I think they're very important. And we're going to start with this one today. Where have I been calling self betrayal commitment? I want you to think about this. I want you to think about the conversations you avoid, the needs you suppress, and the places that you shrink. And then ask yourself, am I staying from love or am I staying from fear? Because anything rooted in fear will always require you to abandon parts of yourself. But this journey we're on, this is about wholeness. This is about choosing you fully, boldly, without apology. And as we move through this, we're going to be breaking down the abandonment wound that loyalty often masks, and how it begins, how to begin coming home to yourself even when it feels unsafe. But for now, I want you to breathe. I want you to hold truth, because this is sacred. So let's talk about the kind of love that doesn't feel soft or sacred. It feels heavy. It feels consuming. It feels like pressure. It feels like obligation. And here's the cool truth: love and obligation are not the same. But when you've lived through trauma, when your earliest connections were built on meeting someone else's needs to stay safe, you learn to confuse the two. I want you to sit with that, because this hits deep, especially for women who was the responsible one from way too young, the one who was praised for being mature, applauded for not needing much, expected to regulate her parents' emotions, or internalize the message that love means being useful. When you feel responsible for someone else's emotions, that's when you learn to start self abandonment. You might have grown up with parents or caregivers who were emotionally inconsistent, unstable, or unavailable. You likely learned early that your safety depended on how well you can read the room. So you became hyper aware. You learned to anticipate. You kept the peace. You learned what to say and what not to say, because if they were okay, then you were okay. So you kept giving, you kept shrinking, you kept smoothing things over. I personally can relate to that, right? A lot of what I experienced as a child was conditional. And a lot of what have seen in my romantic relationships actually mirrors the relationship that I had with my father, because that relationship is the one that taught me fundamentally to abandon myself and show up for him in the ways that he wanted. Otherwise, I would be abandoned. Every time I did something that he did not want, he would cut me off financially. He would stop speaking to me. He would act like I didn't exist. So, from a very young age, I learned that I have to be quiet, I have to be agreeable, I have to be likable, so that this man, my father, actually loved me for me. That's not love. It was survival for me. And my nervous system didn't know the difference. So fast forward to adulthood, people who learn these kind of lessons, you still carry the same script. If they're upset, it must be my fault. If I don't slow down, I'm being selfish. If I don't show up, I'm being selfish. If I put myself first, I'll be abandoned. So then you start calling it loyalty, you start calling it love. You say, I care deeply, but the hard truth is, if your caring constantly depletes you, if your loyalty requires self abandonment, if your love is laced with guilt, it's not love, and it's obligation. So let's talk a bit about the guilt, because guilt, it's a leash that keeps so many powerful women stuck in cycles of overgiving. We guilt ourselves into showing up. We guilt ourselves into silence. We guilt ourselves out of boundaries. Why? Because at some point we were told that to leave means that we don't care, that walking away is betrayal, that choosing yourself is selfish. And that belief keeps us emotional hostage, even when the relationship is one-sided, or the job is draining us, or the friendship is rooted in trauma bonding, or the family dynamic keeps replaying your childhood pain. You stay because leaving feels like failure, even when staying is killing your peace. Sis, guilt is not a compass. Guilt is a learned emotional response from trauma. It shows up when you finally start putting yourself first. And it tries to convince you that you're doing something wrong. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Involved with somebody who I've never even had a saw something. I don't know. It's telling me my connection is lost. So if you can still hear me, I don't want you to miss this. Okay. So I'm just going to recap because I don't know what got cut out. I was in this situation with someone, and for years we never had it that I spoke up, something that made me feel very comfortable. Every fear that I had in that situation came to surface. I was missed. I was then kind of gaslit. And it made me realize that I was following the same kind of patterns that I had been following pretty much since I was a child. So, you know, I had convinced myself that I couldn't speak for a very long time. And when I finally did, yeah, there was a consequence to that. But the consequence didn't bother me as much as knowing that I had been abandoning myself for years at that point. Once I came to that realization and I didn't see it, it's crazy. Like, I work with trauma and I did not see how I was abandoning myself in this situation. But once I had time and I saw the consequence came up, gave me the opportunity to really reflect and analyze everything as a whole. And I realized that I was giving so much of myself in this situation that I was actually self abandoning when I just thought I was showing up. That's what happens, right? Like, you have to learn how to disrupt a pattern. You have to learn how to reclaim your power. You are no longer available. You have to become no longer available for being needed over being loved. And that's going to feel unfamiliar because it's brand new. But unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong, it means that you're healing. And I was upset that I eventually had to walk away from this situation because I realized that again I was abandoning myself. But what I realized, well, this is healing me. As much as I don't want to leave this situation alone, I have to in order to move forward. So I think it's very important to highlight that emotional caretaking does not equate to intimacy. Taking responsibility for someone else's feelings is not love. We'll they'll fall apart without me is something that we often tell ourselves. Or if I leave, they'll spiral. They need me. That is emotional dependency, right? My second marriage was with somebody who was a recovering addict. And I stayed for a very long time because I made his sobriety my problem. That's huge. I made his sobriety my problem. So I wouldn't leave. I stayed longer than I needed to because of that emotional codependency that I was very unaware of. To me, it sounded noble. Often it sounds noble, it sounds loving. It's actually you over functioning to avoid being rejected. Because if you rescue them, they won't leave. If you solve everything, they stay, right? And the more you do it, the more invisible you become. Because what you're calling love is actually a contract that says, if I keep showing up, you'll keep loving me. But let me ask you something real. What happens when you stop performing? What happens when you stop fixing? What happens when you finally say no? Do they still love you or do they disappear? Because that answer will tell you everything. And my history has shown me that people disappear. And oftentimes I will be very distraught by that. However, I learned through healing, through my healing process, that if they did disappear, they weren't for me in the first place. And I had to be okay with that. You were never meant to be the savior. You were never meant to sacrifice your emotional safety to keep someone else comfortable. But if you grew up in systems, whether it's family, culture, or religion, where love was transactional, you learned that staying loyal earned you approval. You learned that overgiving gave you a seat at the table. You learned that disappearing your needs made you worthy. That is the invisible contract. You didn't sign it, but it's been ruining your life. It sounds like I'm not allowed to need. I'll be loved if I'm useful. It's my job to hold everything together. But sis, what if I told you you don't have to earn your place in anyone else's life? Not your mama's, not your partner's, not your best friends, and definitely not your job. Your worth is not measured by your usefulness, it's measured by your wholeness. So here's some truths. Love rooted in fear is not love. Loyalty that requires silence is not love. Guilt is not proof you're doing something wrong, it's proof that you're doing something different. And that different is exactly what your healing requires. So, again, with our journal prompts, I want you to consider, who taught you that leaving means I don't care? Was it a parent who guilt tripped you for having boundaries? Was it a teacher who praised you for overextending? A religion that called self sacrifice a virtue? A culture that said a woman's job is to stay? I want you to think about this. I want you to get honest. I want you to name it, because when you name the origin, you can start rewriting a new story. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing next. We're going to be unpacking what it costs to constantly hold everything and everyone, and how to come back to yourself without guilt or shame. But for now, I want you to sit with this question. I want you to ruminate it. Let it shake what it needs to shake so it can set you free. So let's take a collective breath before we get into this, because this one might hit a little close to him. And I want you to hear me when I say loyalty is not love if it costs you your peace. It's not devotion if it demands your silence. It's not strength if it's slowly breaking you down. But we're not taught that. We're taught to be a bigger person. We're taught to stick it out. That's just how we are. Don't make a fuss. And the result is that we end up burned, tired, and bitter, with a smile on our face and a scream in our chest. So let's talk about the expensive price of staying. We've all done it. Stayed in relationships too long, stayed at jobs that drained us, friendships that only worked one way, family dynamics where we disappeared ourselves just to keep the peace. We told ourselves it's not that bad. We're already invested so much. That they mean well. I can handle it. But what we didn't tell ourselves was the truth that our peace was slipping, that our body was whispering warnings, that our spirit felt smaller every time we stayed silent. And here's what no one tells you: there is an emotional debt that builds when you keep betraying yourself. And like any debt, it collects interest. The longer you stay in misalignment, the higher the cost becomes. Burnout that no amount of sleep can fix, resentment that simmers underneath your smile, disconnection from your own needs, desires, and identity, chronic fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, that ache in your chest that whispers, is this it? We call it adulthood, we call it responsibility, we call it love, but really it's the tax for self abandonment. And sis, it is too damn expensive. So here's where self abandonment hides, because it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like saying yes when you're screaming no, smiling through microaggressions at work to keep your job, being the reliable one even when no one checks on you, holding your tongue around family because they wouldn't get it, going above and beyond in relationships hoping that they'll finally see your worth, dismissing your own needs because someone always has it worse. Self abandonment builds slowly. It's sneaky. And it's been normalized, as I said before, for women, especially black and brown women, to tolerate. But being resilient doesn't mean being self sacrificing. And there's no prize for staying longer than your peace. So I'm going to break down the physical and the emotional too. Let's talk about your body because your nervous system knows when you're living out of alignment. You might be holding it together on the outside, but your body is telling you the truth. Through those migraines, through those gut issues, through your hair loss, your sleep problems, your anxiety, the panic attacks that come out of nowhere, the numbness that feels like you're watching life happen from the outside in. It's not a time management problem. It's not because you need to be a better planner. It's because your nervous system is tired of carrying what isn't yours. So I want to do an embodiment practice real quick. So we're going to pause right here and I want you to put your hand on your heart. I want you to close your eyes if you're in a safe place. And as if I always say, don't do it if you're driving. And let's do a 2 minute breathe and release practice. So I want you to inhale and exhale. And the next time we do so, I want you to repeat this mantra: I am safe to choose myself. I am safe to choose myself. And as we exhale, I'm allowed to let go. I'm allowed to let go. Inhale, my value is not measured by how long I stay. Exhale, I don't owe anybody my suffering. Now, I want you to repeat both of these. I am safe to choose myself. I am allowed to let go. My value isn't measured by how long I stay. I don't owe anyone my suffering. But this one is important. I am allowed to choose myself even when others don't understand. Let that sink in. Let it shake loose whatever it needs to, because healing does not require anyone's permission. It only requires your truth. So Here we go again with our journal prompt. What part of me still believes my needs are too much? Who taught you that? Where did you learn that being low maintenance made you lovable? That having boundaries made you difficult. That taking up space meant that you were selfish. Because it's time to unlearn that. Your needs are not too much. Your silence is not love. Your loyalty should never come at the cost of your sanity. Next, we're going to be talking about what it really looks like to choose you, not from spite, but from wholeness. We're not rescuing anymore. We're not waiting to be chosen. We are choosing our damn selves. We talked about the cost of staying, the emotional debt of over loyalty, the burnout that comes from always being the strong one. But now we're going to talk about returning home to ourselves, because all of that unlearning, all of that awareness, all of that grief, it leads us here to the moment where you say, I will no longer betray myself in the name of keeping others comfortable. Because real loyalty starts within. So let's dismantle a myth real quick. We were taught that loyalty means stay no matter what, be there no matter how much it costs you, ride or die, even if you're the one dying inside. But the truth is, loyalty without boundaries isn't love, it's self abandonment, again, in a pretty picture or a prettier outfit. When you've been loyal to others before you're loyal to yourself, you're not being committed, you're being drained. Self loyalty doesn't mean being selfish. It means choosing to honor your truth even when others don't understand it. It means checking in with yourself before checking off someone else's box. It means letting go of the lie that love and suffering have to go hand in hand. So let's be honest. So many of us over explain our no. We want to be understood. We want to be liked. We want approval, even in our boundaries. So instead of saying no, we say, I'm sorry. It's just been a crazy week and I'm behind and I don't want to let you down. But, sis, no, we're going to have to rewrite that whole script. No is a complete sentence, first of all. But oftentimes, we're not comfortable saying it. You don't need a permission slip to honor your peace. So, as I always do, I give you scripts, boundary scripts that you can borrow. No apologies required. This no protects my yes. No explanation, just wisdom. You're honoring what matters. I'm not available for that, but I hope it works out well. Simple, graceful, and final. Or the way I like to frame it is, I don't have the capacity for that. Like, that's my favorite sentence now. And that's coming from somebody who could never set boundaries for myself. I've outgrown this dynamic. It is no longer aligned with who I am. It's not an attack, it's just the truth. This is one that I have used personally. I love you, but I love me more. And I'm choosing peace over performance. Simple. And the last one, that's not a decision I need to explain. Period. What would change in your life if these sentences became part of your daily vocabulary? And this is some of the things that I work on with my clients, right? Being able to set boundaries in a way that it feels comfortable, especially after years of self abandonment. Many of us have been abandoning ourselves for decades. So let's go inwards. If you're in a safe space, close your eyes. I want you to do that. And I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to meet her, the version of you who's loyal to her peace first. What does she look like? How does she move through the world? What does her voice sound like? What boundaries does she set with ease? What invitations does she no longer accept? What relationships has she outgrown? What spaces has she walked away from? And maybe more importantly, what parts of herself has she finally returned to? This version of you does not abandon herself for connection. She doesn't mistake guilt for guidance. She doesn't tolerate chaos to prove that she's loyal. She is rooted, clear, and free. Let her guide you to your next yes. Let her protect your next no. So, the last journal prompt that we are going to be using for today is, what does loyalty to myself look and feel like? Does it feel like calming your body? Does it feel like fewer explanations and more peace? Does it feel like walking away from people who only love the version of you that bends? Does it feel like finally hearing your own voice again? I want you to pour out into your journal. No editing, no censoring, just your truth. And I want you to leave this live today knowing that you are not disloyal for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for needing boundaries. You are not selfish for saying enough. And anyone who demands you abandon yourself to prove your love, they ain't loving you. You've stayed long enough. You've bent far enough. You've earned nothing as a result. Which is sad, unfortunately, but many of us are in that position because wholeness isn't earned, it's remembered. And when you start remembering you become unstoppable. Let's end this live with no apology, but with ownership. This is your return, this is your reclamation. And if you want support continuing this journey, keep listening. Um, because I've got something for you. So take a breath, let that land. Because for so long, we've been conditioned to believe that loyalty means sacrificing ourselves. We've been told that love is proven through pain, that devotion is measured by how much we can tolerate, that being a good woman means being endlessly available, agreeable, and accommodating. But it's all a lie. And what the real truth is you don't have to abandon yourself to be loved. You don't have to betray your peace to belong. You don't have to carry what is was never yours to feel worthy. Sis, if any part of this life hit home for you, and you're done with the burnout, with the overgiving, with the invisible loyalty contracts, you don't need another masterclass on boundaries. You need a healing space, a space that doesn't ask you to earn your way in, a space where your nervous system gets to soften, your truth gets to speak up, your body gets to rest, and your worth isn't based on who you save, solve, or stay for. And that's exactly why the survival mode accident membership exist. Inside the membership, we unlearn survival mode patterns that taught us to equate pain to proof. We heal the nervous system imprints that stay, you can, you must give to be good. We release the guilt that has been unleashed and rewrite scripts that finally let us breathe. And we have built a community that thrives on celebrating rest and truth and sovereignty. This membership is for the woman who is ready to say no without needing a 10 slide presentation to justify it. The woman who is ready to be witness in her softness and not just in her strength. The woman who built a life where peace is the norm, not the reward for burnout. The woman who is ready to reclaim her time, her voice, her boundaries, and her damn self. You don't have to keep performing loyalty while you quietly fall apart. You don't have to keep fixing what's breaking you. And you definitely don't need to keep pretending that you are fine just to be liked, loved, or needed. It's time to break down. It's time to break up with performative loyalty and come home to yourself. Inside the survival mode Exodus membership, this is your soft landing, your truth telling, your safe return. This is the space for you, and that alone is powerful. Whether you sat through this whole session with tears in your eyes or just caught a single line that cracked something open, that matters. You matter. And I know this work isn't easy. Unlearning survival isn't a switch, it's a sacred undoing, but you're doing it. And you don't have to do it alone. So, this is a reminder that you don't have to earn healing. You don't need to be perfect, more productive, more palatable. You are allowed to be held. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to want more and be worthy in the becoming. If tonight stirred something in you, don't rush to fix it. I want you to sit with it, honor it, journal it, breathe it, let it land. And then I want you to come back next week. We are here every Sunday at some point between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. GMT, which is 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. EST. And every week I bring the same realness, same depth, same disruption. Bring your softness, bring your questions, bring your messy, brilliant, tired, hopeful selves. This space isn't for performance, it's just for your peace. Until then, I want you to stay loyal to your healing, rest when it's hard, speak when it trembles, and choose you even when it's unfamiliar. And remember, you are not too much. You are not too broken. You've just shedded everything that never saw you clearly. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you again next week.